Hi guys, it's time to talk about the best and the worst books that I read in 2025 so far. Let's get into this. Hey guys, so I don't make enough videos about my reading journey. So I decided to be one of those folks who makes a mid-year book video. Let's talk about the books that I read in 2025 for the first time. This way I have kind of done an amalgamation of not just including the worst, not just including the best, but also including 8 separate categories of books that you may or may not want to check out. All right, let's start with the weirdest book I've read so far. That's right. This is a book called Beyond Apollo by Barry Malzberg. This is a book that was recommended to me by Bookpilled, and he really likes this book. He really likes this author. I have to say, I see why. This book is essentially the epitome of an unreliable narrator. A man who has survived an interplanetary trip, and everybody is trying to piece together what happened, but he may not necessarily be the most reliable. But he's kind of working his way through some kind of psychosis, and we're getting a lot of his perspective in this story. I think that this was a very weird book, but it did a lot of really good things. Something to check out for sure. I'm still not quite sure how I feel about it. The next special category is Biggest Surprise of the Year. Now I have to say I'm going to cheat because it's my list, so I'm going to have 3 books. The first one is going to be When the Moon Hits Your Eye by John Scalzi. This is a 2025 release, and to be honest, I went into this one not expecting a whole lot. It came up in my library, and so I went ahead and grabbed it, and I was actually pleasantly surprised by this one, despite its title. And it's kind of very weird premise that the moon has now become cheese. I did like a lot of the exploration of the character work that was done in this story. It was definitely better than some of his previous works, although it's nowhere near close to his best work yet. And the next 2 are ones that kind of came out from nowhere. The first is Winter World by A.G. Riddle. This one is a book that I kind of picked up on a whim. I had just been seeing it kind of everywhere, and I needed something for an airplane ride. This book got me hook, line, and sinker. I immediately finished the first one and checked out the second and the third. I finished the trilogy in a weekend. It was another just fast-paced, super fun science fiction adventure. It was a first contact. It was about a world that was dying, recolonization. There's so many different themes that are covered in this book. There's a lot of fun twists and turns, conspiracies, things turning out not to be how you expected them. I really liked it. I don't think it's going to blow anybody's mind, but it came out of nowhere for me, so I have to mention it here. And the last one on the biggest surprise is Star Surgeon by Norse. This book, again, came out of nowhere. I picked it up on a whim. I do believe it is out in general common copyright, so you can get it in a lot of really easy places, including, I think, on YouTube for free. I will link something in the description box down below if you're interested. But this book was an incredible medical sci-fi story that I didn't see coming. It was surprisingly accurate and kind of fun, very whimsical, maybe a little naive, but honestly, I had a really good time with it, especially as somebody in the medical field. I really highly recommend it. It was a huge surprise out of nowhere. Definitely one to put on your list. The next tag is your favorite 2025 release. Now, I haven't read that many yet. I should probably catch up soon, but I do have to mention Where the Axe is Buried by Ray Naylor. This is a really interesting book, a lot different than his original book. And it really deals with the future and a lot of politics. We're talking a lot of government issues here. And in a future where most governments are governed by AI, we have a couple of holdouts that are dictatorships and surveillance states. And our main character is from one of these places. She has escaped. And after many years, decides that she wants to go back to say goodbye to her father. And lo and behold, they decide not to let her out. This story was a lot more philosophical than I expected. The character work really hit me in a place that I did not expect. So I had a really good time with this. I am definitely a Ray Naylor fan, although I have to tell you, it seems like if you didn't get along with his first book, then you may not love this one. So keep that in mind before you pick it up. The next category is a 2025 release that has not come out yet, but you're looking forward to. I'm going to pick one that I haven't heard really anyone talk about, and that is a book called Outlaw Star by M.R. Carey. I think this looks like it might be the beginning of a trilogy, but let's be real. The reason why I'm really interested in this one is the cover. It's gorgeous. And I have never read anything by M.R. Carey before, so this book might be the one. Next, I'm going to talk about my favorite novella of the year. And yes, I have read quite a few. This one is The Practice, the Chain, and the Horizon by Sophia Samatar. I apologize if I'm saying all of these names wrong. I just read them. I don't know how to pronounce them. What I can tell you about this novella is that it's a novella in 3 parts, and each of the 3 parts follow the 3 parts of the title. This book was an incredibly futuristic, philosophical work that is almost essentially Plato's allegory of the cave. That's pretty much what the story is in the future. It was incredible. This is very whimsical. It's very allegorical, but it's very deep and heavy. It deals with a lot of different issues, but it was a 10 out of 10 for me. I really was blown away by this one. If you don't mind some philosophy in your life, please pick this book up. Next, we have my favorite non-sci-fi of the year so far, and that's going to be The Remains of the Day by Kazuo Ishiguro. Yeah, that's right. I got on the Kazuo Ishiguro bandwagon. I decided that I was going to pick it up on a whim, and the recommendation of my friend Joanna from Joanna Reads. And it turns out that I had an incredibly emotional response to this book. It was really heavy, especially for somebody who is maybe having a all-encompassing job like healthcare. This book really carried a lot of weight, asking questions like, what is it that you're living for? And is your job enough to give you happiness and purpose, or do you need something more? And it really talks a lot about priorities. Oh my gosh, this book was so good. It kind of was a self-help book that I didn't know I needed. So highly recommend if you're not opposed to a book that makes you think. So the next category is favorite sequels of the year so far. Now this one is definitely going to go to 2 books. The first one is going to be 2010 by Arthur C. Clarke. This is of course the follow-up to 2001: A Space Odyssey. Oh my gosh, this is one that I definitely also picked up on a whim. That seems to work out really well for me. I really was interested in where else he was going to take the story. And to be honest, I wanted to either get rid of the other books or not. And if you've watched any of my content this year already, you might know that I absolutely adore 2010. I think it's better than 2001. I really like it that much. So if you haven't picked up the series, or if you've always heard about the movie but never picked up the books, I would say that 2010 is an incredible read. I really thought that the story advanced so much more. I'm a huge Arthur C. Clarke fan, and this book was awesome. The other favorite sequel this year is going to be Critical Mass by Daniel Suarez. This book is another book that just blew me away. And I really liked Delta V. I learned something in it. It was a fun asteroid mining survival story, but the follow up to it, Critical Mass, was so much broader in scope, which tends to be the kinds of stories that I love. It really brought in a lot more politics. It brought in a lot of how we get other big groups of people in on board, how popular opinion works. There's so many cool things in this story. Daniel Suarez is definitely a must read author for me. And Critical Mass is so far my favorite of his books, I think. So definitely something to check out if you haven't already. Next, we have the top 4 books on your TBR pile. So this is kind of an interesting one, and I thought I would steal it. Somebody else in the booktube community did this one. These are books that are on the top of my TBR that I'm hoping to get to in the next couple months. The first book is called The Female Man by Joanna Russ. I think you might have seen it in my British book imports video. Another one that is in that same video is Look to Windward by Ian M. Banks. This is a culture novel that I have a buddy read coming up next week for. So that one is definitely a very soon to be read. And then I also have the book Shroud by Adrian Tchaikovsky. Of course, I have to get in another 2025 release, and he has 2 released, so I better get to those soon. And then last but definitely not least, Diaspora by Greg Egan. This is one that I keep hearing a lot about, but I need to make sure that I read it when I have some dedicated time to really engage with this story. So that one is going to be waiting for me when I have several days off in a row. All right, now let's get into the 2 categories that most of y'all have been waiting for, and that's going to be the worst or most disappointing books of the year so far. So I'm going to divide this into 2 categories. I have 2 books that I DNF'd, and I have 4 books that are disappointing or worst. The first worst or most disappointing book is going to be Jurassic Park by Michael Crichton. You guys, I know this is shocking, okay? I did not hate this book, but wow, was it an incredible disappointment. I mean, I grew up on the movies, and I have to say, I kept hearing that the book was so much better and that the ending is different, and that was not my experience at all. I felt like this book didn't add anything to the story that the movie didn't do or do better. That's right. I know it's a hot topic. I know, hot take, but I do want to point out that I could have read so many other books when I read this and just watched the movie, and I still would have gotten like 90% of it. So I'm sad to say that Jurassic Park is a no-go for me. Next is Quantum Radio by A.G. Riddle. This is a book I picked up because I picked up his other series that starts with Winterworld, and I loved it so much that I wanted to pick up other things by him. And because I had such high expectations from his other series, this one just did not live up to the quality of his other series. And I was so disappointed in it. I'm definitely not going to finish that series. And I'm not sure if I want to pick up more by him or not. So we'll see how my feelings change. Maybe we'll see. But that one was really disappointing for me. Now the 2 books that I really disliked the most, but did finish, is the famous book, Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. You guys, this book won the Hugo. There's so much accolades around this book. And despite it being like 1,000 pages, everybody says it takes a long time to get started. You just got to get through it. And the end is great. And I got to tell you, I want my time back and my money. I am so upset. This book was so mid. It was so... I didn't care about the characters. I didn't care about Mr. Norrell's reputation. The magic was not interesting. The story itself, I didn't care. I was rooting for everyone to die by the end. I was very disappointed by the climax. Talk about anticlimactic. It was just so long and so boring that it taught me to hate it. The next book on this list is Green Mars by Kim Stanley Robinson. I already didn't have a great time with Red Mars, but I really was hoping that Green Mars would change my mind. And Green Mars also won a Hugo, so I needed to get it done, and I also wanted to give it a chance. And I'm sad to say, no. Another book that just went on forever that taught me to hate it. Oh my gosh, I would burn this book if I actually owned it. I don't understand where the terraforming was. We spent so long inside the characters. And I'm not an anti-character reader, but oh my gosh. I think that there was at least 3 chapters in this one story dedicated to a man who has taken on an alternative identity. And to hide himself, he has started a relationship with a woman named Phyllis. And he whines in this book for at least 3 chapters about how he doesn't like Phyllis and he hates hanging out with Phyllis and he doesn't want to have sex with Phyllis. And I just didn't care about Phyllis. And I don't understand why we had to dedicate so much time in this book to these details that just didn't matter for the planet, for the politics. We never got any info dumps the way that I was really hoping for. The few that were in there just were not enough to sustain me. I really had a really terrible time. So it shouldn't surprise you that of the 2 DNFs I had this year, the first one was Blue Mars, the 3rd book in that series. I read the first couple chapters, and you guys, I immediately put that down. I was like, I am going to burn the world around me. I will not be able to finish that book. I already just hate the series so much. Oh, I gotta say, DNF, that series is not for me. I tried it. I gave it a whirl. Never again. I really just had a bad time. It's definitely going to be more of the same. So if you love it, I'm so happy for you. That's just not for me at all. The second DNF that I had this year is Bone Clocks by David Mitchell. I'm really surprised about this one because I really want to love Cloud Atlas, but I haven't picked that one up. I decided to try something different and pick up Bone Clocks. This was a buddy read, and everybody in the buddy read was so excited about it, and I just couldn't care about it. I think this book really just hit me at the wrong time, and that's very, very possible, but I didn't care about the characters, and for a character-based story, that means everything falls apart. And I was doing anything and everything that I could to not read that book. I finished 2 other books in the middle of this buddy read because I didn't want to read it. So that said, I did decide to go ahead and DNF it and move on with my time, which is one of the best things I did this year. Now let's move on to my best books of the year. I have about 10-ish, and it's going to be 10-ish because I am cheating a little bit, and that's fine because it's my list. So let's get into it. The best book that I read this year is hands down probably going to be on the end of the year list as well, and that's going to be Pandora's Star and Judas Unchained by Peter Hamilton. I know that these are 2 huge books and that they're separate, but they really shouldn't be. They're one big story. I read them almost back to back, and to be honest, they are one in my mind. So I'm cheating because I'm not counting both of them as the best book. They are together the best. And I would also say that Judas Unchained isn't really a sequel, so that's why I didn't really put it on there, because to me, it's the same story. They just cut it in half. So this series is one of the most immersive, epic space operas I've ever read. It has everything in science fiction that I love. And I've only said that about maybe 1 or 2 other books in my lifetime. And one of them was the Hyperion Cantos. So to me, these books, I should say, belong on the shelf with the Hyperion Cantos books. and they actually are. So I have to tell you, these were incredible. I cannot wait to pick up everything that Peter Hamilton writes. The next book on this list is going to be The Algebraist by Ian M. Banks. This is not a culture novel, but is instead a science fiction novel that stands alone. I think it's set before the culture, but don't quote me on that. What I can tell you about this one is it also is a huge, epic, spanning space opera. It's a standalone, and it's a little bit of tongue in cheek. There's all kinds of gold nuggets inside this story. Really cool ideas that Ian Banks kind of slips in there, gives you a couple paragraphs about an idea, and then he moves on. And each of those gold nuggets could be an entire novel in and of themselves. He has so many innovative ideas. He is subverting a lot of tropes in this one and also kind of making fun of some of them. I had a great time with it. I had one or two little picky details that I didn't love about the ending that kept this book from being maybe my favorite book so far, but I really loved this one. If you're tired of series, but you want that epic feel of a series, this is a book you must pick up. Next on the list is Stand on Zanzibar by John Brunner. This is a Hugo Award winner that I read this year and is much older than a lot of these books on the list, but oh my gosh, is it the most prescient book I have ever read? I mean, it predicted so many things and it's done so much to impact the genre. I understand why it won the Hugo. It is the epitome of what I would expect for a Hugo Award winner. And while everything that he did in the story wasn't always effective, it was pushing the boundaries of what science fiction was at the time. And I really am impressed by this book. It really blew me away. In case you don't know what it's about, I would say my one-liner for this story is it's about a world who is very much overpopulated. And he's exploring the reasons why this would be so awful and what life would be like in this world. There are so many things that he gets accurate, like so many. Our reliance on social media is just one example. Next is a book that I finished at the beginning of this year, so I'm going to count it, and that's Perdido Street Station by China Mieville. This book was... What can you say about this book? It was weird. It was intriguing. I don't know if it's science fiction or fantasy. I love that about it. I cannot wait to pick up The Scar. I'm hoping this year. That's the next book in the series. I heard so many good things about it. But this book has a lot of disturbing things in it, but I kind of learned to like them. The fact that we have a very imperfect relationship that is actually very loving, and it's a relationship of two people who are not even really the same species. And there's a lot of intrigue. There's an incredible amount of world building. There's so much allegory in this story. This book is one of those books that would really do very well for rereading. You would get more and more and more things out of this one. I would highly recommend it. All right, the next book on this list is An Anthem by Neil Stephenson. This is a book of juxtaposition, and because of that, it's just so fresh. It's so original. I mean, it's almost like a kind of dark academia vibe because we are following an initiate who is named Erasmus, and he's going through this process of becoming a monk, essentially. But it's not of religion. It's of logic and science. Wow, what an intriguing idea. And amongst all of their debates of logic and deep dives into things like AI and what that means, we also have the arrival of an alien spaceship above the planet. There are so many interesting aspects to the story. I honestly think that if anything, this book was more of an overwhelm. And I think that some of the themes maybe stood out a little bit more than others. And maybe some of them were a little bit more fleshed out and some of them were a lot more underdeveloped. I also found that there were some things in the latter half of this book that didn't really match with the tone and vibe of the story. And I found some picky detail plot holes that we can talk about in a later video. Overall, I had a really good impression of this book. It's just a couple little tiny things that really held it back for me. Next, we have The Quantum Thief by Hanu Rajimi, and I'm sure I said that wrong. I'm so sorry. Importantly, this is a hard science fiction book about a man who is kept in a prison in the future, and he has to escape. But it's not a regular prison. He's not just locked up. It's also a psychological prison. And there's so many interesting aspects of this book. It just kind of hits you out of nowhere. There's so much to love about this story. I would highly recommend it if you like hard science fiction. This is a book for you. So the next two are going to be kind of on the same tier, and that's because I read them back to back. They have kind of a similar vibe or theme, and because of that, they just both really stand out in my memory. And that's The Rig by Roger Levy, followed by Love Minus 80 by Will McIntosh. These are very fundamentally different books, but both of them deal with a future where death has been solved, but not exactly. You end up getting frozen in time with your body, and only the rich are able to revive you. In The Rig, we have a really complex story with lots of narratives, including questionable AIs. We also have a interplanetary mob ring that has entrapped a young computer genius. We have so many other pieces that are moving in The Rig. It was really incredible. It is definitely not YA, so don't be fooled by that cover. Love Minus 80 was a little bit of a sci-fi romance. Don't worry, there's no spiciness in that. But this one had a really intriguing idea. The dead women of this world, who, if you're young when you died, have a chance at reanimation as a bridesicle. That's right, they only get reanimated if you want to get married. So you can go on something like 30-minute dates for an exorbitant amount of money, and they will revive you to get married, which you are then given a second chance at life, but you have to be married to this person. This is a really interesting idea and a very interesting way to show how the rich can take advantage of the poor. This is a really interesting dynamic duo of these two books back to back, and it really stood out to me as one of my better reading experiences of this year. Next is going to be Madness Season by C.S. Friedman. This is a book that I read as a buddy read with my friend Rachel from the Shades of Orange. And this series has the closest creature I've ever seen to a Shrike. It was really interesting. The book follows essentially a vampire in the future who has seen Earth be taken over by an alien race. And this alien race discovers him and discovers what he is. And it's a very threatening thing for them because this means that he remembers what Earth was like before. And they rule with an iron fist, so any kind of hope, any kind of idea generation is not allowed on Earth, and so they go after him. This story was a lot more intriguing and a lot more fun. It's kind of an underhyped book because there's so many cool aspects to the story. I think that it has a lot to love if you go into it kind of expecting just a fun adventure with a little bit of extra substance. Next on the list is a recent read of mine called Mars by Ben Bova. This is part of the Grand Tour series, but I started here, and I gotta say, I wasn't confused. I would recommend picking this book up as a standalone if you want to. This book just has everything I'm looking for in a space exploration colonization book. It rivals The Martian for me because despite not having a quirky, funny character like The Martian does, this one was more about the awe of the Mars exploration. There's just so many interesting elements We follow a half Navajo astronomer, and his whole goal in life is to try to see if he can prove that there was once life on Mars. And boy, I just had a phenomenal time with this story. It was not mind blowing, but it was everything that I was looking for in bread and butter sci fi. If you like the idea of hard sci fi, of what could be possible, this book, I think, is very accurate and, as far as I know, really, really a fun read. Next, we have an surprise on the list, and that is Outpost by W. Michael Gear. This is a book that I happen to run into, and I've been ignoring it because the cover looks like a horror scene. And I'm not really into sci-fi horror, but I'm really glad I ignored this cover because this book was a fun, abandoned colony adventure where the colonists, who have been all but abandoned by the corporation, have left them on this very hostile world to try to live. And a company ship has come finally after several years, maybe almost a decade, to resupply them, and discovers that barely half of them are alive. There are a little bit of violence in this story, but there's a lot of political maneuvering. There's a lot of really interesting scenes about this hostile world. It reminded me a little bit of Death World by Harry Harrison, but is taken a lot more seriously. I found out that this is a 6-book series, and so I definitely got the second one, and I cannot wait to find an excuse to pick it up because I had, again, just a fantastic, fun adventure time with this story. So I really hope the second book can hold up to the first. And that does it, you guys, for the best and worst books that I've read in 2025. Let me know in the comment section down below if you have any of your best or your worst that you think I should pick up. Here's Indy. And just in case you guys were interested, this little guy, my new puppy, his name is Indiana Jones. So just wanted to reintroduce him with his name and say, until next time, you guys, see ya in the next video. See ya. Bye.